My name is Francisco Velasco Caballero, Administrative Law Professor in Universidad Autónoma de Madrid University and Local Law Institute Director from the same university, and in the next few minutes, inside the Sharing Knowledge project, developed by UDiTE in collaboration with the Institute, I'll try to describe the organization's diversity or local tiers in Europe and expose what are the reasons for explaining local tiers diversity in European countries. A starting point would be recognizing that in Europe there are a great deal of structures or local tiers with a level of more or less complexity, local government levels, and with governed units on each level. During the next minutes, I'm going to try to identify some criteria to explain the local tiers' diversity. We have identified 5 criteria which could, in this different combination, explain the local tiers' diversity. First would be the state or region relevance, like political power above local area on each country. Secondly, what is demographic structure on each country. Third, tradition to weight on each country organization founding. We'll also mention relevance of the democratic principle in the political power structure of each country, and last, we'll also mention as an efficiency explaining criteria the budget, economic, public concern on each country we are going to consider. The first point I want to explain is not only how the local tier concept is shared in Europe. There are countries, like France, for example, where they get integrated inside the local area, what is properly regional, the regions. However, the pattern we are going to follow here is try to understand that the local power is everything which is under state or regional structure. From this point of view, we can identify in Europe simple local tiers and complex local tiers. When I talk about simple local tiers, I mean they have a unique government level, which is normally the town hall. When I talk about complex local tiers, I mean there are more than 2 local government levels. But even inside the simple local tiers, there is a great model's diversity. We have, for example, the England case, inside the United Kingdom, where the local tier is simple, based on unitarial authority, and where the governed units, namely the unitarial authorities, number is relatively scarce, about 400. At the same time, we have the Austrian case, where also being federal state, the local tier is simple, based in towns, but where there are a great number of towns, let's say about 3,000. On the other hand, we have complex local tiers, which means with more than 2 local government levels. Also here, there are a great diversity, because we have some countries which, while having a complex local tier, the number of local government units is low, or others where it's high. Let's mention the France case, where there is a complex local tier based mainly in towns and departments, where the town's number is very high, well above 36,000. On the other hand, we have Italy, Spain or Germany with complex local tiers with a much more small number of towns in the 3 cases, let's say about 8,000. Having seen the diversity of local tiers in Europe, now we are trying to explain, using 5 different criteria, how the combination of these criteria is what explains this local tiers diversity. And above of these selected criteria would be the relevance of this supra-local power has to local tier conformation.
La relevancia que tiene ese poder supralocal para la conformación de la planta local.
The conclusion we can draw at this point is that the form of the state, being the state unitary or federal or more or less centralized state, doesn't condition in a decisive way the local tier structure. It happens that we have unitary states with simple local tiers, this would be the case of Portugal or Bulgaria, and we have also unitary states with complex local tiers, like France, for example. On the other hand, we have federal states or decentralized states which have simple or complex tiers. One federal state example with simple local tier would be Austria, and a decentralized federal state with complex local tier would be Italy or Germany. What is really important is that we may have a federal or decentralized state, or on the other side, unitary or centralized state, but it doesn't condition the local tier structure, while it determines that some pieces in the local government levels will be very weak. It's normal to observe in federal or decentralized states that the territorial government level we call district, highest in Germany case, or provinces in the Italy or Spain cases, are relatively weak, with the idea that there are many territorial government levels, and because of that, one of them, the local territorial structure, is weaker than the other. A second criteria that could explain how each local tier is in the different countries would be the demographic structure. Here we can mention then when we find scattered demographic areas because we have a country area or because we have a demographic structure with a scattered population settlements, this usually tends to give birth of local complex tiers, which means at least two local government levels. We can find that in rural Germany there are Kreisen, which have an important functional level, or while in rural England there is some trend towards two government levels. On the other hand, in concentrated settlements, because country structure is that way, what normally occurs is that local tiers are simple and have only one government level. This is the urban England case, for example, where there is an authority concentration, a unique local authority for all businesses in the local community. The third criteria which explains local tiers diversity in Europe could be tradition and history weight, in the idea that local tiers that were designed sometimes more than 1 century ago have generated some territorial identities around them, which 1 century later it's difficult to change. And also, very often, tier or local organizations are formed by law, and not always we have a parliamentary majority enough to change this law. From this point of view, it's possible to observe that in some European states there is a clear local tier continuity in relation to a historic moment, as it was the liberal revolutions in the end of the 18th century and beginning of the 19th. If we observe France, Spain or Italy local tiers, we will identify a high number of municipalities, 36,000 in France or 8,000 in Italy or Spain, which has to do with the local power in the birth of contemporary states. Also, with less relevance, we can see some continuity in the local tier structure in old socialist countries, where even local power has been democratized, and the local tier structure is still, like in the Lithuania case, relatively similar as it was in socialist era. The fourth criteria that could help to explain local tier diversity in Europe would be the democratic principle relevance, that is, how important is democracy on each state at the time to configure the local tier. Here, we'll see that those states which pay great attention to the democratic principle tend to have complex local tiers, that is, more than one local government level, so for each local community there is its own democratic government. This is important to understand why some states having simple local tiers like England, Wales, Lithuania or Bulgaria are developing sub-municipal levels. In these states, with simple local tiers and only one government level, we might miss that the daily affairs of the small community, neighborhood or car population are governed by their own citizens, and in this way, creation of local government entities has been promoted in the last years. That is the case of Localins in 2011 in United Kingdom. in order to explain the Europe local tiers diversity would be efficiency. That is, how much every state tried to manage local power, local communities, with the smallest possible budget. From this point of view, we have to realize that a great deal of northern European countries, traditionally from the 70s, have opted for a reduction on the number of local governments, mainly in a horizontal view, that is, the number of municipalities, or in the other cases, also the number of regions. This is the case of Sweden, Germany, or even England, Finland, or recently Denmark.
Actualmente, y como consecuencia de la crisis financiera de algunos países de Europa,
mainly in the southern countries, we observe how recommended policies from European Union or from the International Monetary Fund go towards a reduction on the number of local governments. We can find some changes made recently in Italy, like a reduction of some municipal government levels, what they call circoscrizione di centramento, or provinces number reduction. Or in the Portuguese case, where it started in 2011, a process of reduction in the number of freguesias, that is, sub-municipal entities. In Spain, there are also some proposals for reduction in the number of local governments. In this context, we have to express some possible objections to this policy of reduction in the number of local governments. These policies and recommendations are based on the idea of scale economy, with the premise that a superior government-level management normally produces saving, and a region acts in a more efficient way than a town, and a structure above region would even save more costs. The first objection to these premises is that it is based too much on the economy scale logic, on the hypothesis that a superior government level acts in a more efficient way than a lower local government level. This would lead to the logic of trying to concentrate public service management in provinces or regions. But this economy scale, studied in public economy terms, not always explains a cost reduction, because density economy is so important, like economy scale, at the time of giving local service, which is the urban settlement structure on each territory. So even if we concentrate the government in only one level, the district level, if there is still a scattered population course, public service cost will be the same, both if it is managed from every population nucleus or it is managed from a higher government unit. In second place, even recognizing saving cost effects proceeding from scale economies as a consequence of improving public services to local government higher levels, we have to bear in mind that this cost reduction in given service goes next to democratic deficit, that is, local government decreases in cities and proximity, which are the receivers of this public service and will have to perform a democratic control, the accountability on service management. Last minutes we have tried to describe Europe local diversity and give possible explanations on why local tiers in different countries are diverse among them. As an end of this brief exposure, we can draw the conclusion that even local tiers are diverse, but they have still connection points because they share some common elements. Higher or lesser democratic principle weight, higher or lesser tradition weight, all these are factors that, combined in a different way, explain why this European local tier diversity. There is, even if we don't have a unique European local tier, we do have local tiers explainable with a unique criteria.